Hey everyone, Tony D and Little Joan here with a hot take about what else? Impeachment. When will it end? Um, Impeachment never seems to end because the people who want impeachment don't understand what impeachment is. So I'm going to try to explain it again. As I said in previous videos, impeachment is a political process. Okay? It's not really a legal process. In a legal court case, if you're arrested for a crime, you're sent to court, you have a lawyer, there's a prosecutor, and there's a jury and a judge. Evidence is presented, the jury and the judge make up their minds, and then you either go free, pay a fine or some recompense, or go to jail or some combination of that. And it's all very complicated, but ultimately it's the jury and the judge that decides. If you appeal, you go to another judge, and if you keep appealing, you can go up the court system to the Supreme Court. Impeachment has nothing to do with that. In impeachment, the House gathers the evidence, they decide whether or not there's enough to impeach. That is similar to an indictment, but not the same, because you need the votes. Okay, if the Democrats didn't have the votes, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be here. If they didn't have enough votes, the Republicans would have shot it down, and that would have been it. They probably wouldn't even have gotten to the point where the vote just would have, the vote to start impeachment wouldn't even have started. So it's all about the votes. When it goes to the Senate, let's imagine Trump wasn't being tried for whatever imaginary crime the Democrats are trying to sell today. Let's imagine Trump stabbed the president of the Ukraine in front of witnesses, right? He stabbed him, just stabbed him right in the face, and there was blood everywhere. There were 10 witnesses. There were pictures before and after. I mean, the evidence is just overwhelming. He stabbed the president of the Ukraine right in the middle of a summit or something. All right? So there's a big outcry, and the House, they finally got something. They decide that attempted murder is a high crime because it has to be a high crime misdemeanor or treason or bribery. So that's a high crime, and they go through the process. They gather up all the evidence. It's all quite clear. Trump stabbed the president of Ukraine, and they send that all to the Senate. Well, now the Senate votes. The Senate could vote, just like they're voting now, to acquit Trump. They could say, we don't care that he stabbed the president of Ukraine. We don't consider that a crime. The president of Ukraine deserved to be stabbed. Or they could say, technically, stabbing someone isn't a high crime. It's merely an assault. This is merely a one-off. If Trump was a regular guy, he'd probably just get a slap on the wrist for his first offense. They could say whatever they needed to say because they could vote to acquit him, regardless of the evidence. Now, the fallout would be that the American public would see that Trump was not being punished for stabbing the president of Ukraine. And then the question would be, does the American voter give a crap about the president of Ukraine and that he was stabbed in the face? I would submit to you that a lot of people wouldn't care because most people don't care in the United States about other countries, especially a country like the Ukraine. No offense to you Ukrainians. Not that we don't care about the people, but in general, when it comes to a country, you're really talking about that country's government. And people in the United States don't even follow other governments. They just assume, oh, that's some other country, and they're all corrupt and inept, and they're getting money from us or whatever. So, maybe Ukrainian Americans would be outraged, but most Americans would just be like, well, he probably deserved to be stabbed. And consequently, it's about that reaction of the voter. Now, it may be that the Democrats, of course, the anti-Trumpers, whatever you want to call them, they would be outraged and other people in the center would say, yeah, that was too much. Stabbing a guy in the face, that's too much. Really, he deserves to be removed from office. This is kind of the last straw. And then you'd get enough of the center, and then that would translate into, I don't know, polls and, people on television railing against Trump. And then the people in the Senate, the Republican senators of the Senate, would start flipping. They would start flipping one by one because, hey, this is a serious crime. But more importantly, I want to be reelected. So people in certain districts would start to flip, and then maybe some of the other ones would flip. Only because they were going to lose their job. That would be the only reason that they would vote to impeach Trump, if they were going to lose their job. The reality is, Trump has a 95% approval rating amongst Republicans. He is so popular amongst Republicans, he polls higher than Lincoln. Okay? Lincoln, the most popular Republican president by far. Then next is probably, Reagan, I guess. So you're talking basically the most popular Republican president as polled by Republicans is now Donald Trump. Okay? So you think any of these senators want to lose their seat by voting to impeach Donald Trump? No, of course not. They're 100% going to vote to acquit him. Even if he stabbed a guy in the face, they'd probably vote to acquit him if the numbers were like this. Okay? So it doesn't matter what Trump did or did not do, he's going to be acquitted. All the Democrats know that, 100%. The ones that don't know this or think differently, they're deluding themselves. Why are they deluding themselves? Well, I think the answer is quite simply Twitter. Twitter has distorted people's view of the electorate. And it goes something like this, and this is what happened in the UK with their election. So Twitter was once this ridiculous, stupid app that everybody hated, where you take a picture of your meal, or, hey, I'm out on the beach, I'm having a Corona, I'm having a sandwich, and you take these dumb pictures, or you say a couple of things, and that was Twitter. And everybody was on it, and everybody kind of hated it. But even then, it wasn't really representative of the electorate at large, but you had a diverse group of people on Twitter, so I guess maybe you could say maybe it was kind of representative. Certainly more representative than it is now. As the platform got more political, the problem was, quite simply, that the people who run the platform and that run most Silicon Valley platforms are based out of Southern California, one of the most incredibly liberal regions in the United States. They didn't care that other people with other political views said things, really. I mean, they would kind of make a little noise, but the idea was a free and open internet, no censorship. But then 2016 happened, and the people in power at these companies have decided that I can't let this go that far. I don't like freedom that much. Freedom is great, as long as people believe what I believe, which is what I thought people did. But then they woke up in 2016 and realized, wait a minute, not everybody thinks like me. My thoughts aren't the inevitable result of being educated and smart. Because if they were, everybody would think like me. So there's a problem here. And I can't take there are all these guys who think differently. Therefore, I'm going to allow just a little bit of censorship. Not a lot. I'm going to just censor the really extreme guys because they're probably the problem. That was the idea. And so they started with the most extreme people on these platforms, mainly on Twitter. And they said, well, we're just going to prune this guy. And then we're just going to prune that guy. And mostly, nobody really cared because the kind of guys they pruned off of Twitter were, they were right against the rules anyway. They weren't racist, but they were kind of racist. And they had extreme views, let's say. So thus, and the fact that so many people were on these platforms, they just started censoring people. But it was a task that Twitter and most of these platforms cannot successfully enforce. There's too many people, too many posts, and plenty of stuff just falls through the cracks. They tried policing it. Look, you have no further to look than when Twitter posted an AI based on Twitter, and within, 10 minutes of the AI doing its own post, it became incredibly racist. So that's the internet. The internet gets incredibly racist. Now, I don't support racism, but there is racism, okay? I mean, there always has been, there always will be. The idea that you could somehow cull it out of any platform is a ridiculous assertion. You just can't do it. You can't do it. And actually, we've reached the point now that they've done it so much, they've actually created another kind of racism. It's sort of that whole racism, the racism of low expectations kind of thing. So we've got people who are so woke and so PC that they're actually kind of racist in their views once you drill down and hear what they have to say. They believe, I think a lot of them believe that, for instance, African Americans are like a monolith when they vote and that they're all going to vote Democrat. That illusion will be shattered, hopefully, by the 2020 election. And I say hopefully in that they know. It's definitely going to happen. I mean, I've seen video after video of black Trump supporters, Latino Trump supporters. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of them. The Virginia March, the pro-gun march, had the Black Panthers, plenty of black gun owners, plenty of Latino gun owners, people of all sorts of races, and yet the news media reported on the thing like it was going to be a Klan rally. So, getting back to my point. So Twitter culled the herd, and when racists weren't enough, they went after conservatives. And when conservatives weren't enough, they went after basically Republicans. And now they've reached the point on Twitter where, well, they cannot equally enforce their rules. They've got people on it who are racist, who understand how to skirt their crazy rules and have. And so they're still on the platform. You've had people innocently knocked off and brought back on. And I mean, it's just so incredibly inconsistent. But overall, the result has been to silence conservative voices on the platform. So the platform has become more of an echo chamber for the left side of politics. Now, I used to do a column on my website called Twitter in Focus, where I'd review different Twitter accounts. And a lot of them were celebrities, and they were very left-leaning. They started to get so political, I had to purge them all. And then I had to purge a bunch of comic guys because they were so left-leaning, and they wouldn't stop posting. And even now, after all this time, and after all the people I purged off my account, trying to get rid of a lot of the political people who I just don't agree with and I don't want to hear from, I still get retweets of AOC. Still. The people are retweeting AOC. And I'm just like, why are you retweeting? Who is this person? And yeah, it's another comic guy or another celebrity who's just like, basically one step away from being a full-blown socialist or communist. And so that's what Twitter has turned into. So when they talk about an issue like, an issue with transgender people, what you get is a distorted reality. Transgender people, my good friend Christian's trans, but trans people only make up a very tiny minority in the United States. And that isn't to diminish any of their problems, but the issues of transgenderism are way magnified on Twitter, to the point at which Twitter has in their TOS things about, dead naming people. I mean, this is just not an issue. It's just not an issue. If you're trans and somebody dead names you, you just block them. I mean, if somebody insults you on Twitter, you just block them. The fact that they've created a system in which certain people get special, treatment on their platform has created its own weird virtual world that gives you a distorted view of what people are concerned about. And that's not to say transgender people don't have problems and there's not a concern, but you have to keep concerns in perspective. Diversity and all this stuff. The left side of politics won most of these identity politics things. They won civil rights. They won gay marriage. For the most part, transgender people have most of the rights you would expect. It's now gone so far the other way. We've got these issues with transgender athletes that aren't being addressed, and anybody who even talks about it is considered a transphobic. There's all sorts of issues connected with this that are very complicated, but that's not what Twitter says. What Twitter says, get on board with the program or we will cancel you. And that has been encouraged. And journalists, lazy journalists, most of them are very lazy reporters, rather than talking to actual people, they talk to people online through Twitter, and they get this idea that most people are very woke like them, and that they need to be even more woke in their writings and in their columns and in talking about stuff and in talking about issues and in getting clicks. But that's not true. That's the internet. That's these platforms. That is Twitter in a nutshell. Twitter's more woke than all of the UK. And it's not representative. Whether you agree with these issues or not, it's not representative of the electorate. This then gets translated by the media, which then gets read and absorbed by the politicians, mainly on the left, who then say, I got to be super woke too, because that's where all the trends are going. No, you're getting a wrong reading of the trends. And in fact, wokeness is coming to an end. It's the beginnings are here. Joker is the beginning of that. Whether or not it wins all the Oscars it's nominated for is another story. But, Ricky Gervais, Dave Chappelle, all the signs are there. The wokeness is coming to an end. It's going to come all crashing down. I think it comes to an end in November of 2020 when, just like in the UK, with the Labour Party, who is super, super woke, so woke they're communist and call each other comrade, they just got shellacked. Labor lost seats that they held for over 100 years. I mean, imagine that. Imagine you have a political seat over 100 years, same party, year after year after year, and you lose it finally. I mean, that is a major, major loss for the Labor Party. They are out of power. They are on their way out of the UK. And they have doubled down on the wokeness, and they are marginalizing themselves as they will become a minor party probably eventually in the UK. And the Tories have taken over, and then, hopefully some reasonable, more centrist party will come to power at some point to keep the Tories in check. Right now it's all the Tories, because the Tories are pretty moderate when you really look at them. Just like the Republicans have become extremely moderate. They've been moderated under Trump. I know it's crazy to say for you anti-Trumpers. You think, oh my God, are you insane? No, they really have. They've embraced gay people. Trump forced them to. He held up the rainbow flag at the convention. That's it. It's done. The whole anti-gay stuff is out of the Republican Party. It would take Mike Pence, a Herculean. Am I saying that right? He would have to make an amazing effort to bring all that anti-gay stuff back. And I don't even think he's willing to do that. It's a dead issue for them. So, the identity politics is a losing issue for Democrats because mostly the Republicans are on board for most of it. Most of it. Not all of it. they bristle at a few things, but it's not the reaction they had before. The reaction back in the old days was like, oh my God, gay people, oh, we need to make sodomy illegal, and why should gay people be teachers, and all these other horrible things they used to say. Now they don't say that stuff anymore. Those guys are all dead, gone, retired, or keeping their mouth shut. And that is the reason they are reasonable now. And the Democrats look like they're out of their minds. So the idea that these people who are out of their minds are going to impeach Trump on essentially made-up charges when they don't have the votes and they don't have the will of the people is absurd. Okay? Impeachment is a political process. The Democrats have lost it. And by continuing to pursue a losing issue at the expense of everything else, they will continue to lose. And they will lose more seats in the House, and they are likely to lose at least a few in the Senate. And if they're really unlucky, they will get shellacked, just like the Labour Party did in the UK. And they will lose seats they never thought possible to lose. So if you're a Democrat, I say unto you, call your local representative and senators and say, hey, will you please go on to anything else other than impeachment? It's a losing issue.